Hi everyone, welcome to RafaCast. My name is Rafael Morim, and every episode here is an interview, and we talk about design, development, work-life balance, expat life, mental health, history, and other cool stuffs. Welcome. All right, everyone. I'm very excited to have here one of my friend and like ex coworker of mine. His name is Ben Aden. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Works for GoDaddy. He's a designer, but the thing that I most like about Ben is like he not only do design stuff, he's like developer as well. Like he's very humble, so he's probably not gonna he's going to be the face himself when talk like about him.
Some would say that I'm the most humble.
Welcome, bro. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thanks, man. It's always fun to talk to you, dude. Miss you, man.
Have I forgot to say anything?
No, I think you got it. Maybe the only other detail that is worth noting is that I got 3 kids under 3, so life is pretty crazy right now, but it's always a good time.
Yeah, the new baby. I haven't met yet.
She's really cute.
Oh yeah, you already.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's true. Oh yeah, yeah, I completely forgot, dude. I need to visit you soon as possible. How is Arizona, by the way?
Arizona's good. We finally made it through the summer. I guess it's kind of ironic saying that on October 30th, but uh, it was like over 100 degrees until like a week ago, and then it finally cooled down. So yeah, it was a brutal summer. It was like every day was like, we had the record for most days over 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was super hot. So I'm pumped now that we can like run around outside and do more stuff, which is good. But
Dude,
yeah, we're just living
super
that COVID
jealous.
life.
Yeah, but I'm super jealous of you. Like here in Stockholm is like it's cold. Like every day is super cold, and now it's getting like close to 0 Celsius. I don't know how is that in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, so that would be like 32 degrees Fahrenheit, or and then the other side of that is like 113 degrees Fahrenheit is 45 Celsius. So Uh, it's like nice weather in Arizona now, but yeah, it's not that cold. Not even close.
Yeah, yeah. Every time that I have been there, I was like, we had like some strong discussions about which place was more hot, Rio or Phoenix. I miss that discussion because now my life pretty much suck in the cold.
Well, hopefully you have a good jacket by now.
Yeah, no, actually, it's basically what I'm doing. I'm just buying like winter jackets. It's my new sport here, dude. Like when we used to work together, you started like I remember that we were working the same thing, and you were like your role was like a design, but you called it quite a bit in your thing. First of all, what made you stud like development?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my background, I've taken a very wayward path to what I do today, and I don't think that I'll stay where I'm at for too long. But a little background. So I didn't go to college for design or web development. I went to college at the the Arizona State University in Tempe, which is where I live, and I studied in a degree program called sustainability, and my emphasis was in international development. So you can think of that as like a degree program that's kind of like half of an economics degree and half of an environmental science degree. And so it's like really broad, general degree, but like in an interesting conversations, and you learn about interesting things. But the problem is that when you have a degree like that, you don't have any skills to actually go get a job. So that's basically what happened to me is I graduated in 2010 from college, and it was like right at the point where the US and globally had hit economic recession. So like the markets crashed in 2008, and then they like kind of were like, starting to, they hadn't really rebounded yet. So we were kind of at this like pit of despair where there was not a lot of great jobs. And so I graduated in that climate with a degree that didn't, have great, a great like potential for getting a job, especially a job that I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
So my main criteria for a job is like I didn't want to do sales. I didn't want to do like I wanted to like work on a Mac computer.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Those are like my main criteria. So I couldn't find anything that sounded interesting, and I was having a hard time finding a job. So I I had been like kind of playing around with WordPress at the time, and just like how do you like? It used to be really hard to like install a WordPress theme and like set up uh, set up your WordPress environment and all that with hosting and whatnot. So I figured out how to do that so I could like create a blog. And then someone saw my blog and they asked if I could like help create a website for them. And so I basically did the same thing. At this point, I didn't know how to code at all, but I knew how to like YouTube enough to, get a WordPress site set up for them. And so I started doing that for this business, and it was fun, and I really enjoyed kind of like working in a more creative environment where you kind of have to figure things out and solve problems. And so I started doing that as a business with a friend, and we basically did like websites and branding and videos for small businesses here in Arizona. And we did that for about 2.5 years, and we didn't make any money, but I mean we made money, but like not enough to live off of really, other than the fact that we were young kids and didn't have any responsibilities or expenses, so it worked. But learned a ton over that, and so that's kind of how I started doing design and web development. My partner in that business was an architect, or he came from an architecture background, so he had a lot more training in like the design skills, especially like using tools like Adobe Illustrator or InDesign, or some of those. And yeah, that's what we started doing. We do our web design using Adobe Illustrator back in the day.
It's really great. So you told us there's like you spent like 2 years, and after these 2 years, you decided like this is what I want to do. It's really cool, and I want to keep in this field. Or like after everything like that, like you had like doubts about it, like you were not quite sure, or was like, oh, I really want that.
So the big thing for me is I was enjoying like the work side of things, but I did not enjoy the stress of like trying to do a business and not making very much money. And this was the point where I actually had started dating my wife, my now wife, and I was like, I need to make more money. And I need like health insurance and stuff like that, which is one of those things in the US where your employer pays for, a huge portion of your health insurance. And so fortunately, I was able to get a job through a friend, that kind of leveraged some of the work that I had done over those, 2 years of doing the business, for an education tech company, in Chandler, Arizona. They're called StrongMind. You can look them up; they're still around. They do some cool stuff. So that was my first intro into tech, and I kind of did like a pretty broad range of stuff. I did like a lot of like content, like writing newsletters and like doing scripts for videos,
Yeah.
and then even doing some development of like landing pages for capturing traffic from digital ads. So it's more on the marketing side of things. But that was my first tech job I had.
That was very actually is very nice. While you were talking, I was remembering that for me it was kind of like I started to program when I was a kid, and I remember that I was finishing the high school, and I was thinking like, who's the fool that's going to pay me for like be a programmer? Because I didn't know the programmer like could be like a profession. And you're talking right now like WordPress and this whole technologies back to the past. WordPress was like everything. Like everyone was doing WordPress websites, and it's crazy because now you have worked like I mean you work in the website builder for GoDaddy as well, right?
Yeah, it is kind of funny to come full circle to work on that. And actually, we just merged teams with the WordPress team, so now they're a part of like our organization. So all the work that GoDaddy is doing in WordPress is now like kind of at least the same team now, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, I'm super jealous of you that you kind of got exposed to programming really early. How did that happen? Was it because your dad knew how to program, or how did you get into programming yourself?
Dude, you're trying to rob like the interview, like.
I'm just curious. I've actually never heard how you got started. I
No,
just
for
know that
sure.
you're like 10 years younger than me and you've been programming twice as long.
No, for sure. I can give a brief story. It was basically like when I was a kid, my father used to have like a painting blog, and I had to delete the painting blog after he died. So once I saw how a blog worked, I was very excited. Then I started to learn HTML and CSS, but I didn't know do any stuff beyond that. So 1 year later, I watched the movie like Social Network, which is I saw what they were doing and I got super excited. Like people that can work, and like you, I didn't want to work on sales or other stuff like that. I wanted to keep like doing things on my MacBook, and for me that was enough motivation. I started to really like programming when I realized that I created like a social network for my friends in the school, so they started to use. Then Facebook came to Brazil later or something like that. I mean, Facebook was already there but not so strong. Then everyone migrated from my social network to Facebook, and then I lost all people. But for me, it was enough motivation. I was I was very happy with the things that I have done, and I wanted to keep doing that. So for me, it was well basically, if I had to say like in a short version, I would say that is basically my story.
So you're basically Brazilian Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, but much more, much poor. Like Mark, Mark got money, a lot of money, and I'm still like struggling here.
Touche.
I mean, yeah, but yeah, you can say something like that because both were using PHP in that time. Actually, I only used PHP because I watched the movie, which I kind of regretted later. Not because I don't like PHP, but it's not the language that I main use now. So I feel that was like 2 years of my life that I basically was learning a language that I didn't use much later.
But the act of like creating something is really powerful.
Yeah,
I think that that's something that people who take non-traditional paths learn earlier, is that like when you take a risk to like to create something and make something new, like you might not use the thing that you made, but you learn something along the way that it becomes a foundation for the next thing that you're going to learn. And it really like starts to like build up over time. And so I think that even if you're not using PHP, like you learned something from that experience that really accelerated the process in the next thing that you were trying to do.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I was just joking, but I do feel the same way. And you just bring my question that I was going to do for you right now, like about if you had to describe the learning curve to like starting code, from to you that like work also as a design. So I feel that you have a better perspective than most of developers because you could see like different fields, but this is just my humble opinion. Like, if you had to say, what is the, like, for example, for someone enter in the front end area right now, how you, Ben, feel about like the learning curve to start code today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think So like when I really started learning how to code, we were already kind of in this like node focused front end world where a lot of stuff was, on NPM. Although when I started, it was kind of like still the competition between Bower, if you remember Bower, and NPM for package management. Bower was more front end focused, and NPM was more like node focused. Uh, and so like there was just such a huge learning curve of like, oh man, I gotta like learn some command line, to be able to like install Node on my machine. I have to, get this project set up so that I can, run it locally. And then you're like, okay, I've learned some CSS and HTML, but now Sass or less is like the thing. And so I had to kind of like wade through all of that. And I don't know, it's not ideal. And I think that one of the things that I'm excited about, especially now that we have, for the most part, evergreen browsers, is this new like world where you have ES modules in JavaScript. You have tools like Snowpack that are really like helping the like web community kind of move back to the roots of like just open up an HTML file in your browser and you have something there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Without having to do like all of this advanced setup that maybe you do later on, but like the entry. The other thing that's really exciting to me is like the tools that are available now for like learning how to code. Like you have tools like Replit, which you can spin up a programming environment for almost any language in the cloud, and it's free, which is incredible. And then you have things like Code Sandbox, where you can get like a JavaScript environment with like a click of a button, and you don't have to do all that other stuff if you want to learn React or you want to learn something like that. So I think that like in some senses like there's a lot of complexity still, but the like the resources, the content, the tools are just so much like better now. Really, the thing that comes down to it is just doing something. I think one of the downsides of having a ton of resources is that you're tempted to just look at the resources and never start building anything. At some point, you got to just commit and say, okay, I'm going to build a personal website for myself. I'm going to build, like a small application. I'm going to build something, and it's going to suck. But if you're okay with that and realize that it's part of the process, like you have to suck at something before you're going to be good at it. Like that happens 100% of the time for any skill.
Yeah,
You're going to be terrible at it.
yeah.
And if you embrace that and like you embrace the fact that like you're not going to start out as an expert, but that you can compare yourself to where you were yesterday. And if you're better than you were yesterday, then you're making progress.
Dude, that is exactly how I feel because now I'm like also like trying to learn something new, which is like guitar, and I pretty much suck. Like at least the first month, I was like, dude, I suck. Like there's no other word. Really stressful in the beginning, but I also had to remember that when I started, I didn't really had that much pressure like in programming because I was just a kid that really liked code. So I didn't create a timeline, and I feel that most of the this is basically one of the biggest reasons that kids learn better than adults is because they don't create like expectations about learn. It's more open to learn than adults, yes, but they don't have expectations like they if they are trying something new they're going to try and they're gonna let themselves fail. But if they are like if is adult, it's like we're just thinking like, oh my god, like I need to learn this at least 1 year, otherwise like I don't know if like programming is for me. I need to learn how to play one music like one in 2 months at least, otherwise music is not for me. And kids are more open to that, they let themselves fail. For example, I visit like a school here, and it's funny because you see like Brazilian kids, they have like 4 years old learning Swedish better than adults, and they already speak Portuguese. Like they are actually changing their native language, but they are so open to fail and they practice it most of the time. Then it's like they're really learning, and every like people like us go for like Swedish classes, and we're like, oh my god, what they're going to think if I say this wrong or if I say this right, how much time I should invest in this. And it's basically what you said, like we should let ourselves fail, otherwise we're not going to learn anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's the like analogy of learning another language to speak is such a great example. It's a little ironic to talk about this because I pretty much only speak English, even though I've taken, years of Spanish classes in school and whatnot. But the biggest difference between someone who learns fast and someone who learns slow is their willingness to just put themselves out there, like to speak and make mistakes and to like try and have a conversation with someone. So like if two people are learning the language and one person is just like, studying, like the grammar and studying like the vocabulary over and over, and the other person goes out to a bar and tries to have a conversation, the person who goes out and has the conversation is going to learn much faster. And they'll be able to go back and read the book and understand some of the mistakes that they were making, but it's just like incredible how the application or like putting yourself out there like impacts how quickly you can learn. And you're right about kids. Like, I have 3 kids now, and they don't even think about failure. Like to them, they're just trying to do something and they're unable to do it, and sometimes they get frustrated about that, but they're not like thinking about this future event that could potentially happen of them being embarrassed or failing or something like that. They're just trying things, and like, yeah, it's kind of amazing to try and like have that mindset when you're learning things, like where you're just like not aware of yourself. You kind of forget about yourself and you're just trying, and you're not like
Yeah, yeah. You
self-conscious because
remember
of
me
that.
when I joined GoDaddy. A friend like of ours was joking after 2 years that like how they hired this guy because I could barely speak English. I was so nervous, and also my grammar and everything that I knew about English was pretty bad. So I would say that 2 years, 3 years ago, I was like, shoot, I need to learn English. So I applied for the GoDaddy job, and when I joined it, people were like talking English fluently, and I was like, I felt so like I felt like a huge pressure to learn the language, and was basically that. After 3 or 4 months, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try my best and gonna let myself fail. And like I can learn on the way, but the first 4 months were so stressful for me because I wanted to help the team, but like my English was not quite good. So I was like feeling frustrated now. So like had this like every night almost because I had to like switch my mind to understand what you guys were saying. And after like I just unlock like, okay, I can fail. I have been failing like for 4 months. What else can change? Like I need to learn this. And but in the same way I cannot force myself to learn with like a milestone. I need to like understand that I'm not that good right now, but I'm eager. Okay, I want to do this in the future, and I'm up to like the time that it takes for get better. And that helped me to just be cool. And once I start to get cool, like a kid, I start to learn very fast. It was like I felt that like my English kind of jumped like 1 year after I just unlocked that.
Yeah, I actually remember that pretty well. I remember the first time that you to Tempe. Well, what's awesome about that is like that's such a great example of like I've been thinking about this like quote a lot recently, that you can't grow when you're comfortable. Like a huge amount of growth because of that. Like you don't understand something, so that motivates you to go back and look something up or to like research, which then like propels your growth forward. And then you fail again, and then you do that again, and you learn each step of the way, and now like like you're fluent in English, and you have the confidence to go do that again and
Yeah,
learn Swedish
I
or
hope so.
whatever other language.
Swedish is quite hard. Actually, I mean, English is it was easier for me because like even if you don't want you have English words in your daily lives, and Swedish is like I sometimes I just lost. Like they are doing stuff and like even for me say like Chickling can like talk for the dogs. Like I mean they are like, oh, you have a good pronunciation. Like, but I'm like, I do really have that. I don't know because I cannot even understand if I say right. But yeah, I am very beginner in Swedish. I need to practice much more. But yeah, let's.
Do your coworkers speak English, or do they like at work? At work, do your coworkers speak English or Swedish?
They speak English, so this is the hardest part. But I basically I go for church. Well, I was going actually because COVID closed the church again here in Sweden, and then but we were speaking Swedish, so it was good for me to practice it. But when at first I was so confused, like we were praying, and they are like "Ah, da, 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 blah 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 blah, tak Jesus, and I was like, what? I barely could understand what they were saying. I had only to agree with the like the preaching, but I don't understand what they were praying. I just understand that they're like in the end they say it like "Thank you, Jesus," and that was it. So in the beginning it was really hard, but after some time I feel that I'm able to understand like some words, and that help me to understand like what they are talking about. But yeah, it's gonna take a time.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense too because you're not like as immersed in it
Yeah,
because everybody can speak English.
dude, but like this learning curve that we talk it like this, like right now, is crazy because I feel that like at least for you, for me, it always impresses me when when I remember the time that you worked with me in the same thing. You were like doing design, like screens and like the concept, and also coding like prototypes, like very deeply. Like I told you many times that you could like be an engineer in any company that I have worked in, and I mean it's still true. Like you could be an engineer in Spotify as well. And for me, this always impresses me. How you feel that this affected like your daily work, like know how to code and know how to do design. Like how you feel about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a little bit more detail like on my path, I guess. So like I started out as like really being so after I worked at the education software company, I moved to an agency where I was doing UX design. And so I was like really, heavy on the design side of things. But over time, I really started getting like frustrated that like I was just drawing a picture of the thing that I wanted to like exist, but like it was dead. Like it wasn't like I wanted to be able to bring it to life. So that was a big motivating factor in learning how to code. Um, and so like over the years, kind of like I was still improving as a designer. And I think that there's not as many good resources for learning design on your own as there is for learning to code on your own. I think it's actually a lot easier to learn how to code than it is to learn how to design, which is unfortunate because you have a lot of like really talented people. And at the end of the day, if you break down the concepts into like the core fundamentals, they're really like they're really manageable, and you can start thinking like you have like your foundation of design, which is like typography and grids and color, right? And so you start thinking kind of on these primitives, and in coding you have data structures, right? You learn about like the different data types and how that's kind of the foundation for like the programming that you're going to be doing, and then you kind of build on that and you add techniques and you get experience. So for me, like it was kind of like layering that in and like trying to build the things that I was designing. And now, like, I have an interesting challenge and area that I feel like I need to grow in a lot is because now that like I have the ability to build almost anything that I want to be able to build or that I could design, like that almost becomes a handicap because now instead of like thinking about like really divergent paths that you can go down in terms of the experience, I can get really focused on one and really start moving on to that like implementation and thinking about, okay, how am I going to build this versus what is the right thing to build. And so I think that that's the mentality of like balancing those two things of like, okay, how do I build this is fundamentally different than like what should I be building to begin with. And so a lot of it is like having to go back to the beginning and back to the fundamentals and relearning like, okay, like am I considering all the different options here? And I think that like another thing about design and code that's interesting is that when you get to like a certain level of proficiency, like being really good at coding is not the same as like typing out the letters on the screen and knowing what letters to type. It's the creativity that is like underneath that and like being able to like think of like new ideas of like how to do something that maybe you haven't done before. And the same with design, right? Like once you learn how to like use the different tools, whether it be Figma or Sketch or even Illustrator, like you're just drawing boxes and like like applying some techniques to like put shadows in and layer things and like pull in imagery to like make it like an aesthetic design. But like that part is gets really easy. The hard part is being able to be creative. And so I think that that's really like the big growth area for me, like as I continue to develop my skills, is like you develop like proficiency, but like you also have to be growing in your creativity. And creativity is not like limited to design or engineering. Like creativity is like being able to make connections and think of new possibilities. And so becoming like a better creative thinker makes you a better designer and it also makes you a better coder. And that's really where I'm focused right now.
Yeah, that is actually there's yeah seems very challenging as well because creativity is something that you have to. I feel that is like a muscle. You have to practice quite a bit, and like otherwise, it's. I feel that it's going to. It's like there's a documentary about music that Dr. Dre talks about it. Creativity stuff is more like things that you never can stop doing things. Otherwise, like you're just going to lose the way that you think, the different way you think about the world and stuff. And I feel that it's challenging. Like you said, code is so much more easy for learn. Like you could go for like any website. You could Google like, oh, how I want to do this, how I want you to do a website, I want you to do an app, and you could see like thousands of videos, thousands of articles about like how to really start using different technologies. But when you think about design, it's like you said, you don't find really even if you find a tutorial is more like a conversation to kind of guide you into something that you want to build, not really like steps by steps.
Yeah, so like design is really easy to like you could like it's like kind of like cooking a recipe or like cooking. Like anybody can follow like a recipe and say, okay, I need 1 cup of flour, I need 2 eggs, I need chocolate chips or whatever to make cookies. But the next level of creativity is like how do you invent new recipes? Like how do you like understand like the flavors and how they can fit together to make something that's interesting? And I think that that's like design and coding is like you get to a certain level where like okay, like you can follow the recipes, but now you're like thinking about like okay, like how do I think at a level where I'm not just like reproducing something that already exists, but like I'm actually creating something new. And that's really what creativity is just taking something that doesn't exist today and bringing it into the world. And so one of my favorite tools right now that I've been like really enjoying is Roam Research. Have
Hmm.
you heard of Roam Research?
Yes.
So what's really cool, like Roam is like a note-taking app, um, but like basically everything is like bullet points. But the really cool thing is that you can start to connect ideas. So they have page references and block references. And so like if I want to reference like an idea, I can just like type a couple brackets and put the keyword in there, and now like all of the places that I've like referenced that keyword show up on the same page. And so like it's really cool for like connecting just like stream of consciousness and like different thoughts about, whether it be ideas for a business or I think a lot about like what I want to like, you know, the life I want to create for our kids and like education. I think a lot about, like the different problems that I'm facing at work, and just like kind of like every time I kind of learn like something new, like to be able to just put it in there. And then like creativity is really just about like taking those different ingredients that are all over the place and putting them together into something that is like, delicious or creative and expressive. So I've been having a lot of fun with Rome. I would highly recommend checking it out.
I mean, yeah, that is actually it's a very good subject. I would love to have like one more episode just about it because creativity is so good, like subject to talk about it. But well, last question. Right now, which role, which position do you see yourself right now? You're more like a designer. You're more like a developer, engineer. How do you feel about yourself?
Yeah, that's like I struggle with this a little bit. I think that I like to think of myself as a designer still, even though the reality is like I spend most of my time writing code. Um, I think that like code has the potential to be like a design canvas. Um, and like it's not like when you're a designer, if you're designing a toy, like what the toy looks like is one aspect, but like how the toy like provides entertainment to a child, for example, is like a whole another aspect that you want to think about, if you're a toy designer, right? And so like when I think of myself as a designer, like a product designer or whatever, like I'm not just thinking about like what it looks like, like what the front end looks like, but like what does it feel like to go through the experience, and then like how can you create an experience that delivers that? So I would say that I still think of myself as a designer, but a lot of my interests these are like I'm really interested in like different technologies that like are empowering. Like I've been playing a lot with like some of the no code tools like Airtable and like Zapier, and like you could like as like a non-technical person, like it's kind of the same thing. Like you're learning how to program, even though you're not like writing like text characters into like a text editor to like execute code. You're still thinking like as a program, right? Like when you connect different nodes together like in an automation or something like that, and you're thinking about like, okay, what is the data that's coming in and what is coming out, and like what that enables is like hugely empowering. So I think that that's like really interesting, and I think that like code is like always going to be like a tool, um, that like it's like it's like a power tool, right? um, and I want to get good at like using it at the right places and time to like maximize the value or to make like the experience like, to perfect the experience. But I don't want to use it as a crutch. Like I don't want to come to every problem with code as the solution, right? And so that's I think the next progression is like getting past like code is a tool, right? And so like I've invested a ton of time into learning different technologies, and like some of the solutions that are available. But at the end of the day, like you want to solve the problem and create the best experience. And like if you don't have to write code to do that, then you shouldn't like force that into the situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, if you ask me, I would say that you are both actually, both design and both engineer. And I feel that like honestly, I always told you. I mean, we always talk about this, and like I feel they should have more positions like that. That I mean, you don't have to be good in everything, but it is for me is amazing that like developers know a little bit about design and like at least and designers know a little bit about developers like and is the development. And it's great because you kill so many problems with that. Like for example, like design systems in companies, if the whole team is like composed by designers only, sometimes they don't understand like the problems that engineers have, like using like one type of UI component that they design. So I feel that is like, and it's great. And also this work like in the other way as well, like you can feel that like developers, if they know design, they will at least think more about use design system or like use a pattern instead of like create like their own components, that like ideas that they had, but no one told them to do that. Then you could see like a lot of like infrastructure like internal service like with like different like layouts that they never have been planned, but the developers thought that would be nice to have something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like once you start to see code as a tool, then rather than a solution, is really empowering. And then code could be a really useful tool for solving that problem. But like some problems are created by
Yeah.
code, you know what I mean? And so I think that like that's, yeah, like being able to like identify like what the root of the problem is, and maybe it's like maybe we don't need to like code anything, maybe we just need to like get rid of the garbage that is making everything hard or whatever. Maybe we need to delete stuff instead of add more code.
Yeah, definitely. Well, bro, I'm honored just to have you like talking here. And I mean, if you know that if I don't like say, all right, this is done, we could like be talking about this like design development like forever.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, it was fun. It was fun chatting with you, dude, and it's fun. It'll be fun to listen to the podcast. Hopefully, it's fun if anybody listens. Definitely hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions.
Well, just glad that you are here, like, and we have this amazing conversation. Thank you, bro.